Hi, I'm Pam Bador, and I'd like to talk to you today about one of my favorite revision strategies, the small paragraph revision. Now, this is an exercise that should really be done fairly late in the writing process, when you're happy with your thesis, your evidence, your analysis, your use of quotations, your use of counter-arguments, if you're doing that, and the general organization of your paper, including the introduction and conclusion. This exercise focuses on style and elegance. Sometimes you might have heard someone say or thought to yourself that a paper, your own or someone else's, makes a good argument, but it doesn't really flow well. Now, flow is an interesting concept and a tough one, since it's inherently pretty ephemeral. In terms of process, I'm sure we've all had the experience of trying to write something, but it doesn't really flow. We know what we want to say, but somehow the words just don't seem to come out on the paper or the screen the way they feel in our heads. Often, if there's flow in the process, there's also a feeling of flow in the product. The sentences follow each other nicely with a good rhythm. There's a variety of sentence structures and lengths. The sentences are crisp and clear. But if the first draft didn't flow out, which is, let's face it, something we've all experienced, there might still be some work to do in creating that flow in the final product. The goal of this exercise is to work on final editing strategies. I will ask you to do this exercise just once in our course. If you find it helpful, though, you might do it on several paragraphs for any of your papers. So, the first step is to choose a paragraph that doesn't flow as well as you'd like it to. It should be at least 4 sentences in length, but could be much longer, although not too much longer. Consider the length of paragraph that you enjoy reading. Don't let the paragraphs you write get too much longer than the paragraphs you like to read. But I digress. Copy the paragraph into a new document and separate the sentences into a bulleted list. The first thing you'll notice is the length of the sentences. The key here is variety. If all your sentences are very short, the writing might sound choppy. If they're all very long, the writing might seem a bit meandering. It's easy enough to combine or separate sentences to create a variety in lengths. When your sentences are bulleted, you might also notice if you have a repetition of sentence structures. Such repetition is especially common if you're using a scholarly source. Scholar X argues this, Scholar X also asserts that, Scholar X provides lots of great ideas, etc., etc. If you see that you have many sentences in a row with the same structure, you might also consider rewriting 1 or 2 for better flow. The next step is to look at your verbs. I know the classical definition of verb is action word, as in the verb is the action of a sentence. Of course, that is true. But in academic writing, the action might be fairly placid. To think, to reflect, to argue, to represent, or very, very commonly, to be. I have a colleague who insists on full-length papers that do not use any version of to be. I admire that approach. I'm not quite ready to go there, but students tell me they learn a lot from really putting meaning in their verbs by using more precise and descriptive language. If you notice that your verbs are a bit boring or repetitive, Google power verbs or active verbs, and you'll find verb lists that you can use to inspire more variety in the verb position. Another thing to do in final edits is to read your sentences out of order. There's a lot of evidence that reading your writing aloud is very helpful in proofing your papers. Sometimes you can hear a grammatical error or an awkward phrasing that your eyes wouldn't notice as they skim along. And of course, it's a lot harder to see copy editing mistakes in your own writing than in someone else's. Start at the last bulleted sentence of your paragraph and read it aloud. How does it sound? Is it clear? Are there any word choices that you question now that you take some time with it? Does it make sense by itself? Is it grammatically correct? Reading sentences out of order is often a great way to catch run-on sentences or sentence fragments. Once you've done all that, copy the paragraph and remove the bullets. Read it through, maybe aloud, and see what you think. Do the sentences flow nicely from one to the next? Are they in the right order? Is this ready to hand in? I am certainly not suggesting that you should do this exercise for every paragraph. but it's one of those very detail-oriented exercises that can be very helpful, especially if you have an important intellectually complex paragraph, maybe an introduction or an abstract that you know isn't quite working. Let me know if you have any questions, of course, and happy writing.